Before it can switch at Blissville, Extra 1501 waits on the main for a switcher from one of the local private industrial parks to bring a few high-priority loads to the yard. Engine number 9 is a Bachmann model of a GE 45-tonner, in which I just finished installing a Loxon 5 microdecoder, TCS KA1 Keep Alive, and a Digitrax 13mm 8-ohm speaker, so naturally I wanted to show it off. There is just barely room under the hood for the decoder. The Keep Alive is stuck in the cab overhead, and Bachmann thoughtfully provided a place for a speaker built into the air tanks underneath. Even without a baffle, the speaker sounds just fine to me. I don't need to tell you that the Loxon decoder is infinitely better than the factory equipment, and the KA1 is my go-to Keep Alive for tight installations. You guys that model modern 6-axle behemoths have no idea how lucky you are when it comes to installing stuff under the hood. Now that the switcher has passed, we can get on with servicing Blissville. Just east of Bliss Yard, Blissville is crammed with industries. This overhead view from 1996 gives you a good idea of the industrial nature of the area. I tried to model this as close to prototype as possible, but naturally some compression and adaptation had to happen. For example, the actual track plan for this area is quite complicated. Were I only modeling Blissville, I might have followed it exactly, but as it is, I simplified it to a single long trailing point siding. I also left out some of the open space and compressed some of the buildings. At the left, occupying the old Andrews Lead building, is Carbona. This particular facility is just a warehouse with one spot. This picture shows my model versus the prototype. Carbona manufactured a cleaning product made from carbolic acid. Next to that is Stoll Metal, also in part of the Andrews Lead building. You'll notice that I have the size of the building since it's not particularly interesting and I wanted to model the next two as well as I could. Almost no information is available about Stoll Metal. To the right of Stoll is Allied Extruders. This building was not actually built until the 1970s, but since I find it interesting, I moved it back in time and modeled it. It has 2 spots for plastic pellet hoppers. Next to Allied Extruders is Van Eiderstein, a business with a long and infamous history. To sum it up, they collected dead animals and butcher's offal from the streets of New York and rendered it into usable products like tallow and chicken feed. Apparently the stench was incredible and the facility was surrounded by clouds of flies that literally blacked out the sun, although that might have been a bit of hyperbole on the part of the writer. After some suspicious fires and numerous complaints from the neighborhood, the majority of the facility was shut down, and by the 60s all that remained was this building north of the tracks, which produces chicken feed. Next in line is Triplex Oil, a facility that took used lubricating oil and recycled it to a product that was better and cheaper than the original. Their primary customers were, interestingly, the Pennsylvania Railroad and the Long Island Railroad. Triplex didn't care too much about where its waste oil went, and the site was closed and torn down in the 90s as a Superfund site. Across the tracks and a little further east was Marlin Warehousing, a large storage facility that handled various foreign alcoholic products brought in via barge and distributed via rail and truck. I couldn't model what is the signature building of the complex, but instead chose a smaller, easier piece. Finally, I want to mention the grade crossing at Greenpoint Avenue. First, Greenpoint Avenue actually crossed over the Newtown Creek at this point, and what I have modeled is really only an access road. However, the grade crossing is closely modeled on the original, which was a manned, manually activated crossing into the 1970s, as this picture shows. I believe that it was manually activated because it was so close to Bliss Yard. The frequency of slow-moving trains going back and forth probably made automation very difficult. In case you're wondering, in the photo, the sign that says SS stands for spring switch. At the time, this area was double-tracked and there was a crossover just past the grade crossing. The trailing switch was a spring switch.